Now we're approaching 2 years since Lil Durk was arrested on federal murder for hire charges. Back in October 2024, Durk was picked up in Florida after prosecutors accused him of helping organize a revenge plot targeting Quando Rondo. The alleged attack took place in Los Angeles in 2022 and left Quando's cousin, Savia Robinson, dead. And Durk has of course remained behind bars ever since, pleading not guilty and waiting for the case to finally reach trial. With that trial now scheduled for August, there's been several major developments in the case. One of them we covered was about prosecutors adding new charges and attempting to expand the case against Durk shortly before trial. But now it looks like Durk's legal team just scored a pretty significant win in court, and the judge appears to be checking the prosecutors over how they handle this. So a few weeks ago, we covered prosecutors considering bringing 2 older incidents into Lil Durk's federal case. There was a 2019 Atlanta shooting. He was previously charged over. That case got dropped. And then there was a 2022 Chicago killing of a man named Stephon Mack. At the time, those incidents had not officially been added to the case, but prosecutors eventually moved forward and added these new gang-related charges, accusing Durk of operating OTF as a violent criminal enterprise. And those new charges allowed the government to bring the Atlanta and Chicago allegations into the same case as the alleged attack targeting Quando Rondo in Los Angeles. So instead of the trial focusing on one alleged murder plot, prosecutors were attempting to present all 3 situations as part of one much larger pattern. Now the issue was that they made this move only around 11 weeks before jury selection, and then they asked for the trial coming up in August to be delayed so the expanded case could be tied together with the main case that he's behind bars for. And then Durk's legal team, they decided to fight back, asking the judge to either dismiss the new charges or separate them from the original case. So the trial that's coming up on August 20 could move forward. And now it appears that prosecutors have taken a huge L, and Lil Durk actually just took a huge W in court. So basically the judge agreed to separate the new racketeering related charges from the upcoming trial. So these new charges that they were trying to add on to the main case, it's now been decided that those charges are not going to be tied together with the original case that he's behind bars for. So Durk will still face the original Los Angeles murder for hire case in August, while the newer gang-related charges will be handled separately later. And based on what happened during the actual hearing, the judge was really not rocking with what the prosecution was saying. He actually repeatedly questioned why everything needed to be combined together, and appeared to be checking the government over the way they tried to expand the case so close to trial. Now, one of the incidents prosecutors were trying to bring into the case was a 2022 murder in Chicago. Federal investigators have alleged that Durk was connected to that killing, although he hasn't been charged with the murder. Then there's also the 2019 shooting in Atlanta, a case Durk was previously charged in before those charges were eventually dropped. So they're trying to take these separate incidents from different cities from years ago and put them all in this federal case against Durk. And so the reason why they wanted to do that, I think, is pretty obvious. If they succeeded, the jury would not only hear about the alleged murder for hire plot targeting Quando Rondo in Los Angeles, they would also hear about the separate allegations from Chicago and Atlanta, which of course they would use against Durk and say that his record label OTF is actually a gang. Now, one of the lead prosecutors in this case, his name is Ian Ianiello, argued that the new charges were directly connected to the original case because what happened in Los Angeles, that murder for hire plot that Durk was allegedly a part of orchestrating, was committed on behalf of a gang. So basically, they're just kind of trying to paint a story here. And they're trying to say that this was not 3 random unrelated situations. They wanted to present all of it as part of a larger pattern involving Lil Durk and his record label OTF. But interestingly enough, the judge pushed back. So the judge, Michael Fitzgerald, said he viewed the newly added charges as a strategy, although he admitted it was a no doubt clever strategy to strengthen the original case by placing separate incidents that looked bad for Durk in front of the same jury. And then he really checked the prosecutors here. He basically told them, you believe you have a better chance of winning the Los Angeles case if the jury also hears the Chicago allegations. And then he said, you treat that as a feature, I treat that as a bug. In other words, the judge believed prosecutors saw the extra allegations as a way to strengthen their chances with the jury, while he saw that same strategy as a potential fairness problem. And honestly, that directly gets to the heart of what prosecutors appeared to be trying to do here. By putting all these different charges and all these situations together, personally, I believe that they're trying to control the lens that Lil Durk gets viewed through. And of course, their job here is to prove that these allegations against him are in fact true. So they got to make him look like the gang member they claim that he is. And then the judge basically said that, you know what, we're going to focus on this federal case right here and not mix all those other things that you guys are trying to add in here. And basically he called out the prosecutors on their strategy. Now, I wouldn't really say that the judge was defending Durk personally, but he was focused on making sure the trial was fair instead of automatically allowing prosecutors to combine all these allegations in front of the court. Now, there's also another important point that was made here. And the judge said that if these new charges and these new situations that you're trying to add to the main case are that essential, you should have made the effort to include it much earlier instead of waiting until shortly before trial. So again, I personally think that they were trying to control the framing of the case and present Durk to the jury through a much darker overall picture. And then the judge basically called them out on the fact that they waited all this time to do this and said, you chose not to do that. You had over a year. So I don't want to hear more argument that the third superseding indictment is necessary to prove the Los Angeles murder. So he's saying that you guys had more than enough time to bring this evidence into the case earlier, and you chose not to do that. So now after Durk has already been sitting behind bars for all this time and the trial is finally approaching, you cannot suddenly come back around and argue that these new allegations are absolutely necessary to prove that he was the organizer, allegedly, of this targeted hit. And honestly, I think that's a pretty strong statement from the judge, because it sounds like he was not buying the idea that the prosecutors suddenly needed this much larger indictment in order to prove a case they had already been building for over a year. Now, Durk's legal team, of course, took it even further. Lil Durk, of course, still maintains that he is innocent of every charge against him, and his attorneys described the latest indictment as lipstick on a pig and an acknowledgement of weakness. So here, Lil Durk's legal team is saying that I don't really think that these prosecutors are very confident in the case that they're trying to build against Durk, because if they were confident, they wouldn't be trying to make this entire picture look worse than it is. And so his legal team believes that this was a huge win for Durk in court, and they believe that the judge recognized exactly what the prosecutors were trying to do and stopped them from using the Chicago and Atlanta allegations to strengthen the original Los Angeles case. So overall, this is a huge W for Lil Durk for a few different reasons. First of all, we already know how serious the allegations against him are. They accused Durk of arranging and financing a murder-for-hire plot targeting another rapper, and that members of his team traveled to Los Angeles, followed Quando Rondo, opened fire, killing his cousin. Durk has pleaded not guilty to the charges, and this is a federal case. That means Durk is going up against the federal government with federal investigators, federal prosecutors, and potentially an extremely serious sentence if he is convicted. From everything we've seen up until this point, the perception has been that they basically have been trying to throw the book at him. Durk has remained behind bars without being allowed to go home while the case moves forward toward trial. And then on top of the original allegations, here they are trying to bring in all these other things, presenting everything as part of one much larger picture. So it felt like the government had Durk trapped from every possible direction, but developments like this show us where the real fight could be. Because Durk being denied bond and held behind bars does not automatically mean that they've already proven their case. It means the judge previously decided that he should remain detained while the case is pending. I mean, in the moment when they arrested him, apparently they said that he booked all these flights and he was headed out the country. So perhaps if Durk didn't do that, maybe he would be out in the public while he's fighting this case. But the evidence actually has to survive in court. And now that we're finally getting closer to the trial that's coming up on August 20, the question becomes, how much do prosecutors actually have to prove the original Los Angeles case on its own? Because if they already have everything they need, why were they so determined to place these additional situations on top of the main thing? Why not simply prove the case Durk was originally arrested for? And even the judge acknowledged that combining everything would give prosecutors a better chance of winning by changing the way the jury viewed Durk. So instead of focusing on the main allegations, they would hear multiple violent allegations from different cities and could begin viewing Durk through that particular lens. And to me, that strategy raises a lot of questions. It does not automatically prove that the original case is weak, but it does show that they believe these other allegations would strengthen the story they could tell against Durk. And now the judge, of course, has taken that advantage away from them. So I think this is going to play heavily in Durk's favor, not only because the newer charges will be handled separately, but because the August trial is now going to be much more focused on what the government can actually prove about this alleged murder for hire plot. And keep in mind, they're saying that they have all these records, financial records, bank records, right? Communications, travel arrangement, and payments they claim were connected to Durk and OTF related finances. But if that evidence is as strong as they claim, then why was combining all these separate allegations together so important? So that's the million-dollar question. Again, this doesn't mean that Durk is beating the case. It does not mean the charges are disappearing. And it definitely does not mean the judge believes he's innocent. But I think this is going to give us a much clearer look. I think this is going to come down to what evidence do they actually have against Durk And will it be enough when it has to stand on its own? Overall, this is a huge W for Durk. Of course, I don't know whether he's innocent or guilty, like none of us do, but what I do know is that everybody deserves the opportunity to fight their case fairly. These are extremely serious allegations. So let the man have his day in court and see whether prosecutors can actually prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And if prosecutors cannot prove the Los Angeles charges beyond a reasonable doubt, then he should be found not guilty of those charges. That is how the justice system is supposed to work. And that's what makes this development so interesting. The perception surrounding this case has always been that Durk is completely cooked and that the government has him dead to rights. And so now that the judge has separated everything, we're finally going to see whether the Los Angeles case is truly as strong as it's been made to look. If you made it this far, drop a like on this video, subscribe if you're new here. My name is BlackySpeakz, nice to meet you. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this huge W that Lil Durk took in court. Y'all let me know in the comment section below. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, I'm out.